Welcome to the Insert Learning and Openstax webinar. I'm Matt, one of the teacher co-founders of Insert Learning, and we're going to go over how to take your great Openstax textbooks and quickly customize and differentiate them for your students. So what we're going to be talking about is adding materials, your own materials, to the Openstax textbooks, bringing in additional reading, media, and readings, and you're going to do this in a very fast, efficient way with Insert Learning. So our agenda for tonight is we're going to be going over how to get Insert Learning, personalizing your textbook, enrolling your students, tracking their activity, and adding it to your LMS. And then at the end, we're going to go over how to go use Insert Learning to go beyond just simply your OpenStax textbook and different tools you can use for engaging them. So before we get further, I'm just going to show you what Insert Learning does. So it's a browser extension that works on top of the original page. And this is whether it's OpenStax or almost any other page on the internet. So this is my example right here. I've already made this lesson. You can see the Insert Learning toolbar on the left-hand side. I added in some instructions at the top. So this is a note to my students. I used the record tool right at the, or button up at the top to record a video of me speaking and giving my instructions to the students right away at the beginning. And then before they got into this chapter, I wanted to just simply front load some of these different vocabulary words using Quizlet. So now students can actually go through, and it's a fully interactive Quizlet that they can now practice and kind of like get comfortable with some of these different words that are going to be in there. All right, so now we get into the actual chapter itself in the text. I always like memes with my students. And so this is a classic meme for Pavlov, so I went and threw that in there. You can use the annotation tool to also highlight things as you're going along. I added in a little definition of what physiologist means. I added in a free response question for my students, another one right there. And then down here, we had some slides from class. And so I actually then have them uploaded to SlideShare, and now we have our interactive slides right there, so students now can like review those slides as they're reading through the text. An additional Quizlet here, this is one of their interactive image ones, so students can go through and then practice on that. And then going down just a little bit further here, I'm going to show you of OpenStax has got this great video that they link to it, but I want to embed it into the actual article so students don't have to click on it and go someplace else. And I also have a discussion, or it's going to be a class discussion that I want related to that video. So what we'll do is, this is the video that OpenStax has already found for me. I'm just going to copy that link, head back over here. I'm just going to paste that right into the sticky note. And now we have a fully working embedded YouTube video. And then the discussion question of, if you were to repeat Pavlov's experiment, what would you change? And this is going to sync up live for all of the students. And then way down here at the end, so students are going through the reading, I'm going to add a couple more things as I kind of go through. But then I used Flipgrid, which is this really great video discussion tool that was created at started at the University of Minnesota. Insert Learning is also based in Minnesota. And then we've got the question of, what do you have a question about after reading this chapter? What's great is that now students can just simply record a video answering that question right there with Flipgrid, and then they can even respond to each other. So you can now start a video discussion, asynchronous video discussion at the end of your chapters by embedding Flipgrid into your Insert Learning lesson, and that's all happening on OpenStax. So that means that students do not have to go anywhere else other than that chapter. You've brought all of the additional information into this one place for your students. So let's back up a little bit and talk about how we're going to get there. With Insert Learning, it's a browser extension. So it works on Chrome and Firefox on computers. It is not available on mobile or Safari or other browsers. So what that means is that when you find your textbook on OpenStax, make sure you select the View Online one. And then each separate page or each URL that's up at the top will be its own lesson. So I'm going to go ahead and let this one, or actually no, before it even loads, I'm just going to jump over to the one here. So we'll just jump to this one. So you as the teacher and then also the students will need to have the browser extension installed. So what I'm going to do right now is I see it up here in my toolbar, the purple IL icon. So I'm going to click on that, and then my toolbar is going to load over on the left-hand side. We've got some lesson templates. If you want to, you can just simply click on Do Not Show Again and then dismiss it, and that won't pop up again for you. So from here, you now have your toolbar on the left-hand side. This is for assigning your lessons. Your next one is your highlighting tool. So it's just simply as you'd expect, you can go through, you can highlight. You can change the color of your highlights. We got 3 different color options. You can add in notes or a comment to that. And you can even add in emojis, kind of like liven things up a little bit. Sometimes you need that a little bit when you're really starting to dig into some definitions. Then I'm just going to click OK. And now I've got my note attached to it. And so any highlight that has a note attached to it or a comment is going to have this border around it. And then highlights that don't have that will not have that border around them. Sticky notes are this really amazing, versatile tool. And they let you basically bring content from anywhere else. So different tools like videos or images and embed them in, but then also kind of just add in your own notes directly in there. So with sticky notes, the way these work is that they kind of go by paragraph. You'll notice that highlighted yellow. So I'm not able to add one up here at the top, but as I go along each of these paragraphs, I can add in a sticky note after them. So for this one, I'm just going to go ahead and add in a sticky note right there. And now you can start typing in whatever it is that you want to add in. So whether that is an entire paragraph of additional text you want to record a quick note directly on there, you want to embed some other tool, that's what your sticky notes are for, is for when you want to add in additional information for your students. All right, so our next one now is our questions. So the way that questions work, these are going to be free response questions by default. We've got a couple of question stems, and these are great because they're text dependent ones. So if I want to have, say, like summarize the above text, I can have that. I can change the number of points if you're going to be assigning points for students responding to this, and then I'll just simply click create. Now for the students, they're going to see these questions. They can actually answer them right there. Now for this one, I'm going to go ahead and turn this one into a multiple choice one instead of free response. So as a teacher, if you start typing here, type here to turn this into a multiple choice question, blue, green, we'll just do that for this one. Now it's going to be multiple choice one. I'm also going to add in one more free response one right there, because I'm going to show you what this looks like now for the students. So to preview your lessons as you're making them, you can click on the more options right there and then view as a student. And this will give you the student preview. So this is exactly what your students will see when they're using Insert Learning to view your lessons. So students have their own toolbar on the left-hand side, so they can highlight and add in their own notes as they're reading along. Now I can view all the notes that all my wonderful instructor has added for me. And then I also see the multiple choice question, right? So if I click on the incorrect one, I keep going until I get the correct one. If it was red, there we go, it's red. It automatically does the grading for you. And then for the questions, students just simply type their answer right there. I think ... And it's going to auto save for them as well. So students don't have to worry about like clicking save or anything like that. And then students can also go through and they can highlight those things. So let's say if I highlighted a couple little sections here, there we go. All right, so let's go back now to the teacher view. So now that we're back in the teacher view, one of the things that was like super important for us when we created Insert Learning was just this being able to add questions to the page itself to kind of add that interactivity for the students and also get an idea of what are my students understanding as they're reading this. So for all the questions, you can click on View All Responses and actually see now what they were saying as they're going along. There it is again. So all of your students' names would show up then on there. And then, because for this one of my students have now highlighted something on there, I get this new icon up here, and I can click on that and then select my student, and there's the highlight that they created on there. So you can do that, and so as you get more students, then they'll just automatically populate on there once they start highlighting. And that icon doesn't show up though until somebody on the page, one of your students have highlighted something on the page. All right, so our other tool that we have here is adding in a discussion. So I'm going to scroll down here and we'll just add one right there. And, right, some sort of like opinion thing. So with the discussion questions, these ones work a little bit differently. With the questions, only the teacher and the student themselves can see the response. But for the discussions, this is going to be live for all students within the class. If I did ... and I'm going to go ahead and click on post. So when you post to a discussion, the name will show up and then a timestamp for it. As the instructor, you're able to mute responses. It won't delete them permanently, but you can just kind of mute them and it hides them for everybody else. And for the students, they basically see very much the same thing. So they can go through and they can add in their own responses. So it's a really nice, simple way to be able to bring in a text-dependent discussion within the text. And this is going to be anywhere within the text that we want to, that we can do that. All right, so our other tools that we have here is our more options. So here is now where you can assign it. You can share that lesson out with other teachers. That kind of gives you a share link. Now make sure that when you use this link, you are only sharing this one with teachers and not with students. We have a public library. I'll show you that one later on. Go back to the rest of our options here. So editing our lesson information. So for this one now with Openstax, each lesson ends up getting the same title just because that's kind of like how the titles worked in the HTML. No big deal. I can simply add in, then like, right, this is chapter 6.2. And then you can select your subject and kind of categorize it that way if you choose to. So viewing as a student, we went over. If you're part of the Openstax pilot, then you don't have to worry about that. That's already paid for you. But Insert Learning is $40 per teacher for a year. There's no cost per student or anything like that, so it's very affordable. We have a help section and then also the teacher dashboard. Now the help section, help and support, is also down here. And this is our full help center. So this has got lesson suggestions for you. It's got our FAQs, as well as some important technical information. And you can also, so you can search for all of that right there. You can also click on this icon and then start a live chat with us directly. So if you ever have any troubles at all, ask us a question right here. We can help you out. Search for your questions right there, like how do I do blah, blah, blah. How do I get it to work with Canvas, let's say. We're gonna go over that one next. All right, so we've created our lesson. We're all ready to assign this out to our class now. So we're going to click on Assign. Now, if you already have a class, great. Just select it and assign that one. Now, for this one, I don't have a class yet, so I'm going to create a new class. And that's going to launch me over to the teacher dashboard. So for my class, I'm just going to call this Psychology 1. We're just going to call it. And I'm going to go ahead and create the class. All right, so I'm going to jump back over here now to our lesson that we had. I'm going to assign it. Let's see here. There we go. Psychology 1. Now, a couple of different options you have for assigning. If you just click Assign, what's going to happen is that box will just go away and your lesson has been assigned to that class. But you're going to need some way to get students to go there. Students have their own dashboard where they can find the lessons, and I'll show you that in a bit. Some college professors have started now using Google Classroom. If you use Google Classroom, you can assign things directly out through Google Classroom. But if you don't use some other LMS, what you can do is you can use the assignment link. So I'm just going to click on that. It will automatically copy that lesson link. And so I've got my Canvas course set up over here. So I'm going to go ahead and use that one. So this is my Openstax Psychology class. We're going to click on Edit. And what I want to do is I'm just going to put in a link. So this link, you notice this has a unique URL. So what's going to happen is that now when students click on that, they'll be prompted to install the Insert Learning extension, sign in with Google, and then they'll be taken to that lesson. And so that's going to be the way you want to use that. So you'll have that unique URL so that students get to it. Otherwise, if you just link to your Openstax page itself, so if I just gave my students a link there, they wouldn't see the Insert Learning lesson, that layer that you've created on top of that. So you want to make sure students really get that. Okay, so that's really, if you're going to work with any other kind of LMS, just make sure you use that lesson link as you're going through. Let's go ahead and save that one. All right, so we're going to jump back over to here. So we've assigned this out to our class. We get everything ready to go. Now, we want to be able to see our all of our students' responses. So as we kind of went over before, you're able to view all of your student responses live right on the lesson itself. You can also see responses in the Insert Learning dashboard. Now, there's two different ways you can get to the dashboard. One, click on More Options and then Dashboard. The other, which I prefer, is just simply opening a new tab and then click on your Insert Learning extension. That will take you directly to your dashboard. So on the dashboard, this is kind of where all of your lessons and your classes and the student responses live. So you can see I've got all my lessons right here, and I can sign these out and edit them from there. On grades, this is now where I can now select my class, right? So my class was Psychology. If I spell it right, there we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and select my lesson, and then all my student responses would show up right there. So I'm going to show you instead one of my example ones. Let's see here. Where's my demo class? Oh, all right. So for my demo class, there we go. All right. I'm going to go ahead and select one of the questions or select my lesson. Now, with viewing your responses in the dashboard, there's a couple of advantages. Of one, you're able to see all of the answers all in one place. So with insert on the lesson itself, you would still see very much this, right? So I'd have one question, I'd see all my students' names and all the responses, and I could assign a grade. But if I wanted to see other questions also in one place without having to scroll to the next one, I couldn't do that. Or let's say if you want to see for one individual student, so I want to see what Ariana said for each question. Now I can go through and see that. It's also going to give me an average score for it. I can go through and edit it. And then also for the multiple choice questions, what I really love as a science teacher, I'm a high school science teacher as well as one of the co-founders, insert learning shows you the order that students guessed incorrectly on a multiple choice question, which sometimes has a lot more information for you as the instructor by being able to see what kind of misconceptions my students have. So that's viewing the grades on there. Now for the classes, when I created that class, it automatically showed up in here. So I'm going to go down to my psychology class. Got a lot of classes. It's a lot of prep here. Each class will have its own enrollment code or its own class code. So if you're going to have students manually enroll themselves into the class, what you'll need to do is make sure you use this code and then just simply give students that code. Now, if you're using the assignment link, it'll ask students for that class code, so make sure you include that class code. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to add that over here into my Canvas course so that when students go to that assignment, they're going to then enter in that code. Which one was that? No, here we go. Here we go. You can see all of your lessons, and then also you can see how many students are enrolled. So if a student ever says to you, hey, like I can't see the insert learning lesson, just check your dashboard and then see whether or not that student's enrolled. But most likely, if a student can't see your insert learning lesson, it's because they are not enrolled in your class and they don't have the insert learning extension installed. The last thing I'm going to show you on here as well is that you can invite co-teachers. So if you click on teachers, you can invite your co-teacher. You just put in the email. And with co-teaching, what happens is that both teachers that are connected with that class, any lesson that's assigned to that class, now both teachers can edit that lesson in real time together, as well as view all the students' responses that are on there. And if you ever need to go ahead and delete a class, you can do that as well. If you have students that you need to remove from a class, what you can also do is when you're clicking on reviewing the students, you can then click on this remove student icon and then it will remove the student from your class. All right, so let's go back here to our agenda, right? So we've gone over getting started with, well, I didn't show you that. I'll show you that. So personalizing your textbook, enrolling your students, tracking your students' activity on the lesson and adding it to your LMS. So let's back up. How do you get started with insert learning? It's super simple. So what you do is you just simply go to insertlearning.com and click on Add to Chrome. So we've got some information that's kind of on here, different ways you can use it. We're just going to go ahead and click on Add to Chrome. It's going to prompt you to now, it's actually going to take you to the Chrome Web Store and ask you to install the browser extension. You will need to do that, and your students will also have to have the browser extension installed. We're going to sign in with Google, select that you are a teacher. At this point, you can now create a class, or you can just simply say not now, and then you'll be taken to your insert learning dashboard. It's really that simple. And now it's just a matter of let's create a lesson. And again, remember, the way that insert learning works is that you don't import lessons. What you do is you go out and create the lesson on top of those other pages. All right, so now let's talk about how do you use insert learning to go beyond or supplement what you already have in your Openstax textbook. So I got a couple of different things here, and I'm going to close some of these tabs so I can focus a little bit more on what the different ones were that we want. And then also the different tools that we're going to use for engaging our students. So going beyond Openstax, what I mean by that is You've got your journal articles that you want your students to be reading. You have other primary sources. You have a news article or some other site like Medium or Aeon, or even if you have Google Docs that you want your students to be, that you've got content on that you want to now have your students read. Or if you have a PDF, say like if it's from a journal article and you want your students to be reading that, that's how you can, those are another great way to be able to use insert learning, because what's great is that now you're using the same insert learning interface or platform for your lesson, even though you're taking your students to different places around the internet, because you want them to also understand where it is they should be finding the best information related to your subject. So I've got a couple of different examples that I'm just going to show you. So we've got one here, right? So we've got a research journal article. So if I was going to use insert learning directly on there, I just simply click on the extension. I've got, now for that one, what I'm going to do is I've already downloaded the PDF for this journal article, and I'm going to show you how we're going to use that. Another one would be, say, like aeon.co. I just simply click on the insert learning extension, and then after it's finished loading, you can simply go in and now start adding and modifying and enhancing whatever that content is that's on there. You can do the same thing with Medium. Really, we're talking about the majority of websites that are out there, you can use insert learning directly. So going back to our journal article, a lot of journals and a lot of other great sources are only available as PDFs. Currently, insert learning doesn't work on PDFs, but we have a really great workaround that you can do for that. So I've downloaded this PDF and I've uploaded it to my Google Drive. So I got my PDF right here. What I'm going to do is, for using insert learning on this PDF, I first need to convert this to a Google Doc. So you can either like copy the text and paste it into a Google Doc, but what I'm going to do is just click on Open With and then Google Docs. And Google Docs will now go through and convert that article into our Google Doc. What's great too is that this means it's going to work well with screen readers. PDFs don't always work the best with that. So now I've got my research article here, and I'm going to go ahead and load insert learning on my Google Doc. And as that's happening, you'll notice a couple of things will pop up. So insert learning works on the published Google Doc, and that's essentially like a web page version of your Google Doc. So I'm going to click on Publish and Make a Lesson. And we kind of automate this process as much as possible here. And now it takes you to the published Google Doc. Any changes that you make on the original Google Doc will show up in your published one. Sometimes they can take up to 5 minutes, but they will show up on there. And now you can use insert learning directly on top of that journal article that we had. And we can add in our questions and our discussions and our videos and all the other great things that we want to really enhance what we have in the text and bring that to our students' attention, or supplement it with additional important information that's in there. So the last thing I'm going to cover for tonight is the different tools that you can use for engaging your students. What we're talking about here is if you want to have a class discussion in the text before you have the actual like face-to-face class. So this is a really great way, whether you have students working in groups, or you want to facilitate some sort of like larger discussion, or just simply get students thinking about it and talking with each other as they're reading this independently. If you want to differentiate your lessons themselves, whether that is because you are supporting students that where, say, like English isn't their native language, or just simply of it's a really dense text such as those journal articles, and you now want to bring certain things out more by embedding a video or a 3D model or images and kind of enhancing that stuff. Independent practice, so different tools like Quizlet, where students can now practice those vocabulary words in a very interactive, fun way by embedding a Quizlet quiz directly into the text itself without requiring students to go out there. Because if you just simply put a link, chances are they're not going to click that link, but if you embed it, they will do that. And then also just simply reinforcing important concepts, so that they read that paragraph and then we reinforce it with a video or some additional information that describes it in a different way. So I'm going to go through and just kind of show you how to do some of those things of embedding these different tools. So using this journal article on here, with all those tools, what you're going to do is you're going to use the sticky note for those. So I'm going to go ahead and add a sticky note. So the first one I'm going to show you is SlideShare. We've got a list of about 60, 70 different tools that you can embed with Insert Learning, and those all exist in your Insert Learning dashboard under Resources. So if you click on Resources, then you can see then like tools to embed. But there's a lot of great ones that are out there. So I'm going to go over just simply a few of them, but all of the Google things like Google Slides and stuff like that and Google Forms you can embed. So let's say if SlideShare, right? So we've got some slides. I want to embed that directly into the text. Most tools have this option of embedding. So what I'm going to do is I'm click on Share. And now up here, it gives me a couple of different options. And what you want is this embed one. So I'm now going to copy that text and going back over to our lesson. I'm just going to go ahead and simply paste that in. And now we've got our fully interactive SlideShare embedded directly in there. Before we were talking about Quizlet. So again, there's a lot of different ways that you can use Quizlet for kind of like helping students fully like kind of have a deeper understanding of what they're reading, certain words. So I'm going to click on this more options and then embed. From here now with Quizlet, you can do a couple of different options. So I could do like matching or learn or test or flashcards. I'm just going to leave it as that one. I'm going to click on copy HTML and paste that one in. And now we've got our fully interactive Quizlet. All right, and then the last one I'm going to show you here is Flipgrid. So a Flipgrid, once you've created your grid and you've created your topic that you want, you'll simply click on Share Topic, select the Embed option. We're going to copy that code. And again, same thing, simply in the sticky note, paste in the link, and now we have a fully interactive, well, I guess sign in for it. We got a fully interactive now like Flipgrid, so now students can have that video discussion directly in there. So there's just some really great ways to be able to bring that text to life and engage the students as they're reading the article themselves. And it's going to bring a lot of value of having them read it online of things that you just cannot do in print, which makes it really exciting for kind of bringing some additional things and getting students to go beyond just simply the textbook and get them out there reading more primary sources and more information that's going to be out there that's going to help them continue through their school or education. All right, so thank you very much, everybody. Again, my name is Matt Nupin. You can follow me on Twitter. You can email me. My email is matt@insertlearning.com, or just simply send me a message through the Help Center. I hope tonight's webinar was helpful for you. And let me know if you have any additional questions or if you'd like an additional webinar on a more specific topic of using Openstax with Insert Learning.